The air in my Chicago apartment always felt a little thinner after my mother left. For years, her visits were the one constant I could count on. Every other Saturday, without fail, my mother, Eleanor, would arrive at my door, a plastic container of her famous chicken and dumplings in one hand, a new paperback in the other. It wasn't just a meal. It was a ritual. It was a bridge back to the man I used to be, to the family I thought I still had. I'm David, 47, divorced and feeling every one of those years. My life is a quiet hum of routine. Wake up, go to work as a freelance graphic designer, stare at a screen for 10 hours, maybe hit the gym if I'm feeling ambitious, then fall asleep to the white noise of the city outside my window. My 2 kids are grown, living their own lives on opposite coasts. I see them on holidays, talk to them on the phone once a week, but it's not the same. It never is. My mother's visits were the one thing that broke the monotony. She'd sit on my old floral sofa, the one that's been with me since my first marriage, and she'd tell me stories about her childhood in a small town in Indiana, about my late father, about the mundane dramas of her senior living community. I'd listen, nodding, occasionally interjecting with a question, but mostly just soaking in the sound of her voice. She had a way of making everything feel significant, even the simplest things. She'd talk about the way the light hit the window pane in her kitchen or the smell of rain on a hot day. It was a comfort I didn't realize I needed until it was gone. The change wasn't sudden. It was a slow, creeping kind of absence. The first time she missed a Saturday, she called me. Her voice was strained, apologetic. "David, honey, I'm so sorry. Your sister, Sarah, needs me to help with something. She's not feeling well." I didn't think much of it. Sarah, my younger sister, was always a whirlwind of activity, and she often needed my mother's help with things. Sarah, a high-strung, demanding force of nature, was a real estate agent with a thriving business and 2 small, rambunctious children. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. The next Saturday, another call. "David, dear, I'm so sorry, but I have a doctor's appointment I can't reschedule. I'll make it up to you next time." Her voice was a little more distant this time, and I could hear the faint murmur of my sister in the background. My gut twisted a little, but I pushed the feeling down. I was an adult, for heaven's sake. I wasn't going to get upset over a missed visit. But it was more than that. It was the pattern, the slow erosion of a ritual I held so dear. The missed visits became more frequent, the excuses more flimsy. A friend's birthday party, the weather being too cold, a sudden headache. Each call felt like a new brick being laid in a wall between us. I tried calling her, but her phone would go straight to voicemail. I'd leave a message, and she'd call me back an hour later, full of excuses. One rainy Tuesday, I decided to go to her apartment. I needed to see her face, to hear the truth in her voice. I drove the 20 miles from my apartment in Lincoln Park to her quiet suburban complex in Evanston. The drive was a blur of grey skies and slick roads. The closer I got, the more my anxiety grew. What if she was sick? What if something was wrong? I pulled into the parking lot, my heart thumping against my ribs. I found her door, the one with the cheerful wreath she'd made herself, and I knocked. The door opened a moment later, and there she was, my mother. She looked the same, but different. Her shoulders were a little more stooped, the lines around her eyes a little deeper. Her smile, which used to be so bright and welcoming, was tentative, almost pained. "David, what a surprise, honey," she said, her voice a little too high. She didn't invite me in. She stood in the doorway, blocking my path, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Mom, I was in the area. I wanted to see you. You haven't been answering my calls." I tried to keep my voice light, but I could hear the desperate edge in it. She glanced over her shoulder, a nervous tick in her eye. "Oh, I'm so sorry, honey. The phone's been acting up. I'm just so busy lately, you know." She still didn't move. I could smell the familiar scent of her apartment, a mix of cinnamon and old books. "Mom, are you okay? Is something going on?" I asked, my voice dropping to a low, serious tone. I reached out to touch her arm, but she flinched, pulling away. "I'm fine, David. I'm just fine. But I have to go now. Sarah's on her way over to pick something up." Her excuse was so abrupt, so rehearsed, it felt like a punch to the gut. It was a lie, and we both knew it. I stood there for a moment, a wave of hurt and confusion washing over me. I wanted to ask her why. Why was she doing this? Why was she shutting me out? Before I could say anything, a car pulled into the parking lot, a sleek black SUV, my sister's car. The engine cut, and the driver's side door opened. Sarah stepped out, her face a mask of annoyance. She saw me standing there with our mother, and her expression hardened. She walked toward us, her posture rigid, her mouth a thin, disapproving line. "What's he doing here, Mom?" she said, her voice like ice. She didn't even look at me. Her gaze was fixed on our mother, a silent accusation hanging in the air. My mother's shoulders slumped. She looked from me to my sister, her eyes pleading. "He was just leaving, Sarah. He was just leaving." I felt the last of my resolve crumble. The truth was right there in the air between us. My mother was caught in the middle. I looked at Sarah, at the look of cold triumph on her face, and I knew. She had done this. She had put a stop to my mother's visits. The question wasn't if she had done it, but why. The answer, I was beginning to realize, was something far more complicated and painful than I could have imagined. I backed away, a hollow feeling spreading in my chest. I couldn't fight her, not here, not now. I just nodded, a simple, defeated gesture. "I'll call you, Mum." She didn't reply. She just watched me go, her eyes full of a sorrow that mirrored my own. I got back into my car, the rain starting to fall in earnest now, and drove away. The chicken and dumplings, the stories, the comfort, it all felt like a distant memory, a tradition lost to the shifting sands of family loyalty and unspoken demands. I had a long drive ahead of me, and a whole lot of questions that needed answers. The journey back to my lonely apartment felt infinitely longer than the drive out here, and the quiet hum of my routine life was now a loud, painful ringing in my ears. The true fight had just begun, and I was on my own. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of wipers slapping against the windshield and the rhythmic thrum of the tires on wet asphalt. The city lights of Chicago, usually a comfort, seemed to mock my solitude. Each bright, cheerful window I passed felt like a reminder of the warmth and family I was suddenly locked out of. My mind replayed the scene at my mother's door on a continuous, agonizing loop. The look on my mother's face, that mix of fear and sadness, and the cold, unyielding stare of my sister. It was a tableau of a family broken by invisible lines of allegiance. I knew Sarah's resentment wasn't new. It was a shadow that had followed us since childhood. I was the eldest, the one who went to a good college, the one who moved to the city to pursue a career in the arts. Sarah, on the other hand, stayed close to home, married young, and became a real estate agent in the suburbs. To our mother, Sarah was the practical one, the one who made a life. I was the dreamer, the one who needed to be looked after. Our mother's favoritism was subtle, a whisper in a long-held tradition, but it was there, and it festered in Sarah's heart. The problem, as I saw it, was that Sarah's life was a constant, exhausting performance. She had to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the most successful real estate agent. She was always on, always performing for an invisible audience. It was a heavy burden, and she carried it with a kind of grim determination that left no room for vulnerability. I think she saw my life, my quiet, solitary existence, as an affront. I had none of her burdens, none of her obligations. I had my freedom, and she resented it. My mother's visits to me, a simple act of love and comfort, must have felt to Sarah like a betrayal, a final, unbearable piece of proof that I was the one who was loved, not the one who was useful. I tried calling my mother again that night. My calls went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice strained with emotion. "Mom, please call me. I just want to know what's going on. I love you." No response. The silence felt deafening. The next day I called my sister. Her phone rang once before going to her voicemail. I left a short, direct message. "Sarah, we need to talk. This isn't right. Call me." I knew she wouldn't. She was a master of the silent treatment, a silent war of attrition. The days turned into a week then too. My weekends, once marked by the promise of my mother's visit, now felt empty and long. I tried to fill the void. I went to the gym more often, took on extra freelance projects, even tried to pick up my old guitar, but it was no use. The quiet in my apartment felt louder than ever. I was an island, and my mother was the one bridge I had to the mainland. One evening, I received a text from my mother. It was brief and formal. "I'm sorry, honey, I'm just so busy lately. I'll call you when I have a free moment." It was a pre-written message, I was sure of it. The language wasn't hers. It felt like a corporate disclaimer, devoid of any real feeling. I texted back, my fingers trembling. "Mom, is everything okay? Is Sarah—" I stopped. I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. I deleted the text and sent a new one. "I miss you, Mom. I miss our Saturdays." Her response was a single emoji, a sad face. The most communication I had received from her in weeks. It was a tiny, heartbreaking sign that she was still there, but she was trapped. I decided to try a different approach. I drove to my mother's apartment again, but this time I didn't go to her door. I sat in my car, parked across the street, and watched. I was a detective in my own family drama, a reluctant spy. I watched for an hour, the rain coming down in a gentle drizzle. The lights in her apartment were on. I saw her shadow pass by the window once. She seemed to be walking slowly, with a slight limp. My heart ached. Was she in pain? Was she sick? The thought of her suffering alone or worse under my sister's watchful eye was unbearable. Just as I was about to give up, a car pulled into the parking lot. Not Sarah's SUV, but a small silver sedan. A woman got out, her hair tied in a neat bun, carrying a grocery bag. It was my mother's neighbor, Martha. Martha was a kind, talkative woman who had lived in the complex for years. She had always been fond of me, and she had an ear for gossip. This was my chance. I got out of my car and walked toward her. "Martha? Hi, it's David, Eleanor's son." She looked up, a smile lighting her face. "David, my goodness, it's been a while. How are you?" "I'm all right, Martha. I was just in the neighborhood. I was wondering if you'd seen my mum. I haven't been able to get a hold of her lately." I tried to sound casual, but the desperation in my voice was clear. Martha's smile faded. She looked down at the grocery bag in her hand, then back up at me. "Oh, honey, I've seen her. She's been under the weather, and she's been so busy with Sarah." She lowered her voice, leaning in a little closer. "Your sister, David. She's been a handful. She's over here every day, bossing your mother around, telling her she needs to rest, telling her she can't go out. It's like she's a prisoner in her own home." My blood ran cold. "A prisoner? What do you mean?" Martha shook her head, her face a mask of sympathy. "She told me that Sarah told her. She told her she can't be going out all the time, that it's too much for her, and she told her specifically that she can't be coming to see you anymore. Sarah says you don't need her, that you're a grown man, and you can take care of yourself. She says your mother needs to save her energy for the people who really need her." Martha looked at me, her eyes full of pity. "She meant Sarah and her family, David. Your sister. She gave your mother an ultimatum. It's either her or you." The words hit me like a physical blow, an ultimatum. It was even worse than I had imagined. It wasn't just a simple disagreement or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, cruel act, a power play. Sarah had forced our mother to choose, and our mother, weak and tired, had chosen her. The silence, the missed calls, the cold excuses, it all made sense now. The pain of rejection was replaced by a cold, burning rage. Sarah had crossed a line, and I couldn't just stand by and watch. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about my mother, my gentle, loving mother, being held hostage by her own daughter. I knew in that moment what I had to do. I had to fight back, not just for myself, but for her. For the fading tradition of Saturdays and for the woman who made me who I am. The information from Martha was a raw, festering wound, but it also fueled me with a purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. The quiet numbness that had settled over me was replaced by a righteous, simmering anger. Sarah had not only rejected me, she had manipulated our mother, turning her into a pawn in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The silence, the excuses, the pained look on my mother's face. It was all a result of a cold, calculated act of emotional blackmail, I couldn't let this stand. I spent the next few days in a state of hyper-focus, my creative energy, usually reserved for my design work, now channeled into a single-minded goal, getting my mother back. I knew a direct confrontation with Sarah was a losing battle. She thrived on conflict, and she was a master of turning the narrative to her advantage. I needed a different strategy, something that would circumvent her control and go straight to the heart of the matter. I needed to build my case. My first step was to gather evidence. I went back to my mother's apartment complex, but this time I stayed for hours, observing the daily routine. I watched as Sarah's black SUV pulled into the lot every morning around 10 a.m. and didn't leave until late in the afternoon. I saw her bustling in and out of the building, carrying packages, speaking on her phone. I saw her children, a boy and a girl, running through the lobby, their loud, high-pitched voices echoing in the quiet hallway. My mother would sometimes appear at the door, her face tired but with a forced smile, and wave to them. She looked frail, like a small bird in a gilded cage. I also reached out to my mother's other friends. The phone calls were awkward at first, but once I explained the situation, a surprising number of them were eager to talk. They all had similar stories. My mother had been less social, more withdrawn. She had cancelled a standing bridge game, stopped going to her weekly book club, and turned down invitations for lunch. When asked why, she would just sigh and say, "Sarah needs me." One of her friends, a woman named Carol, told me that my mother had confided in her that Sarah had expressed concern about her forgetfulness and her general well-being, suggesting she needed more supervision. It was a classic manipulation tactic, creating a problem where none existed and then offering the solution, Sarah's constant presence. My heart sank with each new piece of information. The picture that was forming was uglier than I could have imagined. Sarah wasn't just keeping my mother from me, she was isolating her from everyone. She was systematically dismantling her social life, her independence, all under the guise of caring for her. My mother, so kind and trusting, was falling for it. I knew I needed a plan, a well-thought-out strategic plan. I couldn't just storm the castle, I had to be smart. I decided the best course of action was to get my mother out of the environment Sarah had created for her, even for a short time. I needed to get her alone to have a real conversation with her, without Sarah's looming presence. The solution came to me on a cold, blustery Tuesday. My mother's birthday was approaching. A milestone birthday, her 75th. For years we had a tradition of going to our favorite Italian restaurant, a small cozy place downtown called Giordano's. It was a simple tradition, but one she cherished. Sarah, I knew, would try to hijack the celebration, likely planning a large, loud party with all of her own friends and acquaintances. I had to get there first. I drove to my mother's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. This time, I didn't hide in the car. I walked straight to her door and knocked, my hand trembling slightly. It was early before Sarah would arrive. My mother answered the door, her eyes wide with surprise. "David, what are you doing here? You know Sarah is—" "I know, Mom," I said, cutting her off gently. "But I couldn't wait. Your birthday is next week. I want to take you to Giordano's. Just the two of us, like we always do." Her face softened for a moment, a flash of her old self, of the woman who loved our traditions. "Oh, David, I don't know. Sarah has something planned." "I know she does," I said, my voice low and firm. "But this is our tradition, Mum. This is our time. Just for us. Please?" I looked at her, my eyes pleading. "We'll go for an early dinner. We can be back before she even knows we're gone." She hesitated, her gaze flickering behind me, as if expecting Sarah to appear at any moment. Then, a slow, tentative smile spread across her face. "Giordano's? Oh, I haven't had their ravioli in years." "Okay, David, but you have to promise me you'll be quick, just the two of us and no telling Sarah." A wave of relief washed over me. I had a small crack in the wall. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. "I promise, Mom, next Tuesday I'll pick you up at 4 p.m. sharp." I left before she could change her mind, my heart a mix of triumph and fear. The plan was in motion, but I knew this was just the first step. The real test would come at the dinner table. I needed to get her to open up, to talk to me about what was really happening. And I needed to do it without alarming her, without putting her on the defensive. I had one night, maybe 2 hours, to undo weeks of my sister's manipulation. The clock was ticking and the storm was gathering on the horizon. I knew my sister wouldn't take this well. She would see it for what it was, a direct challenge to her control. The quiet war I was fighting had just entered a new, more dangerous phase, and I was about to find out exactly how far Sarah would go to win. The tension was building, and I knew that the peace that had settled over my lonely apartment was about to be shattered completely. The week leading up to my mother's birthday dinner was a blur of nervous anticipation. My phone was a constant source of anxiety, every text message and phone call from an unknown number making me jump. I half expected a scathing message from Sarah, a threat, an ultimatum, but nothing came. Her silence was more unnerving than any confrontation. It was the silence of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. On the day of the dinner, a Tuesday, the Chicago sky was a brilliant cold blue. The air was crisp and a gentle breeze rustled the last remaining leaves on the trees. I dressed with more care than usual, a new shirt, a clean pair of jeans. I wanted to look put together, a sign to my mother that I was stable and capable, not the desperate man she had seen at her door. I arrived at her apartment complex at precisely 4:00 p.m. My heart was a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I parked a little way down the street out of sight of her window just in case. I walked to her door, a small box of chocolates in my hand, a silent offering of peace. I knocked, and the door opened a moment later. My mother was already dressed in her favorite navy blue sweater and a pair of slacks. Her hair was neatly combed, and she had a touch of lipstick on. She looked so much like the woman I remembered, but there was a fragility in her posture, a slight tremor in her hands. She gave me a nervous smile. "You're on time, David, that's a first." "Couldn't keep a lady waiting on her birthday," I said, trying to keep my voice light. I handed her the chocolates. "Happy early birthday, Mom." "Oh, David, you didn't have to," she said, but her eyes lit up. She loved chocolate. We got in the car, and the drive to Giordano's was quiet at first. I didn't want to start the heavy conversation right away. I talked about my work, about a new project I was excited about. She listened, nodding, but her eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, as if expecting to see Sarah's SUV following us. The tension in the car was palpable, a thick, unspoken cloud. Giordano's was just as I remembered it. The smell of garlic and simmering tomato sauce, the low hum of conversation, the warm, intimate lighting. The hostess, an older woman who had known us for years, greeted my mother with a warm hug. "Eleanor, so good to see you. It's been too long." My mother's smile was genuine this time, a small, beautiful thing. We were seated in our usual booth in the corner. The waitress, a college student with a friendly face, took our order. My mother, true to form, ordered the ravioli. I ordered the same. It was our tradition. As we waited for our food, the conversation flowed a little more easily. We talked about her neighbors, about her new favorite book, about the weather. But I knew this was just the prologue. The main event was looming. I took a deep breath. "Mum," I started, my voice low. "Martha, your neighbor. I ran into her the other day. She told me you've been a little under the weather." My mother's cheerful demeanor instantly evaporated. Her shoulders tensed. "Oh, Martha talks too much. I'm fine, David, just a little tired." "Mom, please," I said, reaching across the table and placing my hand on hers. Her hand was cold and thin. "I'm worried about you. You've stopped coming to see me. You've stopped talking to your friends. I know it's because of Sarah." She pulled her hand away, her eyes filling with tears. "David, please don't. It's not like that. Sarah is just... She worries about me. She thinks I need to rest more. I'm not as young as I used to be." "That's not what she's doing, Mum. She's isolating you. She's telling you you're too old, too frail, and she's taking away your independence." "She told you to stop visiting me, didn't she?" I asked, my voice trembling with the effort to stay calm. My mother's face crumpled. She looked down at her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She didn't deny it. The silence was a more powerful confession than any words. After a moment she looked up, her eyes red and brimming with tears. "She told me, she said that she and the kids needed me more. She said you have your own life, your friends, your work. She said I was overextending myself and that I was going to hurt myself if I kept going back and forth. Her voice was a pained whisper. She said I had to choose, David. She said if I kept coming to see you, she would stop bringing the grandchildren over. The words were a physical blow. The cold, calculated cruelty of it. My sister had weaponized the very thing my mother cherished most, her grandchildren. She had made her choose between her two children, knowing full well which choice she would make. The pain in her eyes was a reflection of her own internal battle, a woman torn between her two children, held hostage by one of them. "Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "she can't do that. That's not a choice. That's emotional blackmail." "I know, honey, I know," she said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "But what could I do? I love you both so much, but the kids, I can't live without seeing them. They're my whole world." She looked at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. "She told me you would understand, that you're a good man, that you would put my needs first, that you wouldn't want me to lose my relationship with my grandkids." I felt a surge of emotions, grief, pain, and a cold, hard resolve. Sarah had not only stolen my mother's time, she had stolen my mother's peace of mind and my relationship with her. She had manipulated us both, using my mother's love as a weapon. "I do understand, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "But this isn't right. You shouldn't have to choose. You deserve to see me and your friends. You deserve to live your own life." I squeezed her hand. "We're going to fix this, Mom. I promise." Our food arrived then, a steaming plate of ravioli. But the food tasted like dust in my mouth. My mother picked at hers, the joy of the tradition gone. The dinner had become a theater of unspoken truths, a battlefield where an invisible war was being fought. The truth was out in the open, the raw, painful reality of my sister's demands. And now, armed with this knowledge, I knew what I had to do. I had to go to war, not with my mother, but for her. The night of the birthday dinner, I drove my mother home. The silence in the car heavy with all the things that had been said and left unsaid. My heart ached for her, for the impossible position my sister had put her in. As I pulled up to her apartment, she turned to me, her eyes still red from crying. "Thank you, David. It was a wonderful dinner. It was just what I needed." Her voice was a whisper, a fragile testament to the small rebellion we had just committed. "Don't worry, Mom," I said, my voice low and firm. "We're going to figure this out. I love you." She got out of the car and gave me a quick, tight hug. As she walked to her door, I saw her shoulders straighten a little. A small, defiant act. I waited until she was safely inside before driving away. The weight of her pain now rested on my shoulders, and with it, a new sense of purpose. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I was an active participant in a fight for my mother's freedom. My first move was to try to get my kids on board. My son Ethan, a law student in New York, and my daughter Emily, an environmentalist in Portland, Oregon, were my greatest hope. They were old enough to understand the complexities of family dynamics and smart enough to see through Sarah's manipulations. I called Ethan first. He was in his apartment, a small studio in Brooklyn. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice a little tired from late-night studying. "What's up? Everything okay?" "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something serious. It's about Grandma Eleanor and Sarah." I explained everything, the slow disappearance of her visits, the cold reception at her door, the conversation with Martha, and finally, the heartbreaking confession at dinner. I laid it all out, the facts, the emotions, the painful truth. Ethan was silent for a long moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Unbelievable," he said finally, his voice laced with disgust. "Aunt Sarah always was a piece of work, but this is a new low. It's like she's holding Grandma hostage. That's a form of elder abuse, Dad, emotional and psychological." His words, coming from a budding lawyer, validated my feelings. It wasn't just a family squabble, it was a serious issue. "I know, son. That's why I need your help. I need you and Emily to start calling her, not just Mom, but Grandma. Call her every day, text her, send her pictures of what you're doing. Let her know that you love her and that you miss her. Sarah's trying to make her feel like she's a burden to everyone but her. We need to show her that's not true. We need to remind her that she's a matriarch, not a patient. On it, Dad, he said, his voice filled with a new resolve. I'll call Emily. We'll flood her with love. You won't be alone in this. The next day, my phone buzzed with a group text from Ethan and Emily. They had already started. The messages to my mother were simple and direct. Grandma thinking of you. Miss you. A picture of Emily hiking in Oregon with her dog. A picture of Ethan and his friends studying at a library in New York. Simple acts of love and connection. A direct counterattack to Sarah's isolation campaign. I knew this was just the beginning. The next step was a direct but private confrontation with Sarah. I couldn't do it at my mother's apartment. I needed to get her alone, on neutral ground where she couldn't hide behind our mother. I decided to use the one thing she cared about more than anything else, her reputation. I sent her a text message, my fingers trembling slightly. Sarah, we need to talk. I'm not talking about Mom. I'm talking about your kids. There are some things you need to know about what's going on at the complex. It's urgent. Meet me at the Starbucks on Oak Street tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't call. Just be there. It was a risky move. I was playing on her fears, her paranoia. The what's going on at the complex part was a calculated lie, designed to make her think I had some sort of damaging information about her or her family. I was counting on her need for control and her fear of being publicly shamed to get her to the meeting. The silence that followed the text was a long, agonizing wait. But the next morning, as I sat in the corner of the Starbucks, a warm latte in my hand, I saw her black SUV pull into the parking lot. She walked in, her face a mask of cold fury. She marched up to me, her voice a low hiss. "What is this, David? What's going on with my kids? What are you talking about?" I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, my face a carefully constructed mask of calm. "I think you know, Sarah. Sit down." She hesitated for a moment, her eyes blazing. Then, reluctantly, she sat down across from me. The war had officially begun, not with a bang, but with a quiet, tense standoff in a crowded coffee shop. I knew I had the upper hand for now. She had come to me on my terms. The first strike had been successful. Now I just had to make sure the second one didn't miss its mark. The next move was crucial. I had to be strong, to be the older brother she had always secretly resented. I had to let her know that the game was over, and I was going to win. The future of my mother's well-being depended on it. The air in the Starbucks felt charged, thick with unspoken resentment and years of sibling rivalry. Sarah sat across from me, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. She was a coiled spring ready to snap, but her curiosity, her fear of the unknown, held her in place. I had her right where I wanted her. "What's this about, David?" "Don't play games with me," she said, her voice tight. "My kids are fine. What did you hear?" I took a slow sip of my latte, letting the silence stretch, letting her anxiety build. "It's not about what I heard, Sarah. It's about what I know." I set the cup down and looked her straight in the eye. "I know you told Mom she had to choose. I know you told her that if she kept coming to see me, you would stop bringing the grandkids over." The mask of anger on her face cracked, replaced by a flash of panic. She tried to recover quickly to regain her composure. "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Mom's getting old. She's confused. She doesn't remember things correctly." "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady, each word a hammer blow. "I know the truth. I know you've been systematically isolating her. I know you told her she was a burden to me and to her friends. I know you've been using your kids as a weapon against her." Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving a ghostly pallor. She looked away, her gaze flickering around the crowded coffee shop as if looking for an escape route. "I was doing it for her own good," she said, her voice a little higher now, a little less certain. "She's not well, David. She forgets things. She gets tired. She can't keep up with everything. I was just trying to protect her." "Protect her?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Protecting her would be letting her live her life. Protecting her would be letting her see the people she loves. What you're doing isn't protection, Sarah. It's control. It's a form of emotional abuse, and I won't stand for it." Her eyes, which had been darting around the room, now fixed on me, a mixture of fury and fear in their depths. "You have no right to talk to me like that. You don't know what it's like. I'm the one who's here every day. I'm the one who takes care of her. You're just a part-time son who shows up for a free meal and a sob story." "A free meal?" "Sarah, our Saturday visits were a tradition. They were the one thing that kept Mom going. They were a source of joy for her. And you took that away. You took that away because you're jealous. You're jealous that I have a life that isn't dependent on Mom. You're jealous that she loves me for who I am, not for what I do for her." The accusation hit its mark. Her eyes welled with tears, but they were tears of rage, not sorrow. "It's not jealousy, David. It's fairness. I'm the one who sacrifices everything. I'm the one who gave up a job promotion to be closer to her. I'm the one who's always there, always at her beck and call. And for what? So you can be the favorite?" "Favorite? Sarah, there are no favorites. There is no winning and losing here. There is only a mother who loves her children and a daughter who is holding that love hostage. This isn't a competition. This is a family." I paused, letting my words sink in. "And you're tearing it apart." She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I pulled out my phone and held it up. A picture of my son, Ethan, and my daughter, Emily, with a message to our mother displayed on the screen. "Do you know what my kids are doing? They're calling Grandma every day. They're sending her pictures and messages, telling her they love her. They're letting her know that she's not alone. And you know what she said to me the other day? She said it was like a lifeline you tried to cut." The look on her face was one of pure, unadulterated defeat. She looked at the picture on my phone, at the messages of love and support, and she knew she had lost. Her power had always been in isolation, in making my mother feel alone, dependent. I had just shown her that my mother was far from alone. She was surrounded by a family that loved her, a family that was now actively fighting back. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're a monster, David," she spat, her voice thick with emotion. "You're trying to turn everyone against me." "No, Sarah," I said, my voice calm. "I'm just trying to turn our family back into a family. I'm trying to give Mom back her life." I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "I'm not going away. I'm going to be at Mum's apartment every Saturday just like before. And you can either deal with it, or you can have the entire family, including your own kids, turn on you. The choice is yours." She stared at me, her eyes blazing with a mix of fury and fear. For the first time in a long time she had lost control. She didn't say another word. She just turned and walked out of the coffee shop, her back ramrod straight, her shoulders slumped. I watched her go, a sense of grim satisfaction settling in my chest. The first major battle had been won. But the war wasn't over. I knew Sarah wouldn't give up easily. She would regroup, and she would come back with a new plan. I just had to be ready. The next Saturday was just a few days away, and I was going to be there waiting. The days between the confrontation at the coffee shop and the upcoming Saturday were a tense and fragile truce. I didn't hear from Sarah. My mother's phone, however, was suddenly more active. My kids' calls and texts were now being answered. My mother would call me, her voice a little brighter, a little more confident. "Emily sent me a picture of her new dog," she'd say, a lilt of joy in her voice. "Ethan called me just to ask about my favorite movie. Isn't that sweet?" My heart swelled with pride. The plan was working. The small acts of defiance were rebuilding the bridge my sister had tried to burn. Saturday morning arrived, and the sky was a clear, crisp blue. It was the kind of Chicago day that makes you feel like anything is possible. I made a stop at a local Italian market, buying fresh pasta and a rich, creamy sauce. I decided to make my own version of her favorite meal, a small gesture to show her that the tradition was not just a one-way street. I wanted to bring the warmth and comfort to her, to show her that I was willing to fight for her, to take on her battles as my own. I drove to her apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. I had no idea what to expect. Would Sarah be there? Would she have a new excuse? Would my mother retreat back into her shell of fear? The thought of her being hurt again, of her fragile independence being shattered, made my blood run cold. I pulled into the parking lot and saw it immediately. Sarah's black SUV was not there. The space was empty. A small, cautious wave of relief washed over me. I walked to her door, a large grocery bag filled with ingredients in my hand. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened, and there she was, my mother, Eleanor. She looked at me, a tentative, hopeful smile on her face. "David, you came." "I told you I would, Mom," I said, a smile breaking through my own nervousness. "It's Saturday. It's chicken and dumplings day." She stepped aside and let me in. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and old books, just as I remembered. The floral sofa was still there, the one that had been a silent witness to so many of our conversations. I set the bag of groceries on the kitchen counter. "I brought everything. I thought I'd cook for you this time." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief, of a quiet, profound joy. "Oh, David, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," I said simply. "You've cooked for me for 47 years. It's my turn." I started to work in her kitchen, a familiar space that now felt like a foreign country. My mother sat at her small kitchen table just watching me. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. The simple act of me being there, of the mundane ritual of cooking a meal, was a powerful act of defiance. It was a reclaiming of a territory that had been lost. As the dumplings simmered on the stove, filling the apartment with a warm, comforting aroma, my mother started to talk. She told me about the week, about the phone calls from my kids. "They're so sweet, David. They make me feel so loved. Sarah, she doesn't seem to mind as much anymore. She's been a little quieter. She still comes over, but she's not so demanding." A wave of satisfaction washed over me. The small, strategic attack on Sarah's control was working. My mother was no longer a lone soldier in this battle. She had an army of people who loved her, an army that I had rallied to her side. We ate in comfortable silence, the taste of the homemade dumplings a flavor of a memory reclaimed. When we were done, we sat on the sofa, just as we used to. She talked about a new book she was reading, about a neighbor who had just gotten a new puppy. Her voice was steady, confident. The fear that had been there for so long was slowly but surely beginning to fade. "Thank you, David," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I could never give up on you, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I reached out and took her hand. It was warm this time, and her grip was strong. "You're my mother. You're my family." The rest of the afternoon was filled with conversation and laughter. The old familiar comfort of our Saturdays was back. As I was getting ready to leave, she walked me to the door. "I'll see you next Saturday then?" she asked, a hopeful question in her voice. "Yes, Mom," I said, a smile on my face. "Next Saturday, no matter what." I drove away, the sun beginning to set over the city. The sky was a blaze of orange and purple, a glorious end to a difficult day. The quiet hum of my life was no longer a lonely sound. It was filled with the promise of a future where I would have my mother back. The battle wasn't completely over. I knew Sarah wouldn't just give up. But for now, the war was won. I had my mother back, and she was no longer a prisoner. She was a woman who was slowly but surely reclaiming her own life, one Saturday at a time. The first strike had been a success, but the true victory was in the simple, quiet return of a tradition. The return of our Saturday visits became a new routine, a weekly beacon in my otherwise quiet life. Each Saturday I would drive to my mother's apartment, and each Saturday she would be there, waiting for me. We talked, we ate, we shared stories. The old comfort was back, but there was a new layer of unspoken understanding between us, a shared knowledge of the battle we had fought and won. My sister Sarah, however, was a constant, looming presence. She didn't confront me. She didn't call or text. She was a master of passive aggression, and she used her silence as a weapon. She would drop by the apartment unannounced on Saturday mornings, her face a mask of false cheerfulness. "Oh, David, what a surprise. I thought I'd just pop in to check on Mom." She would linger, making conversation, her eyes watching me with a cold, calculating glare. She would leave behind little notes and lists for my mother. "Make sure you rest. Remember to take your pills. Don't overexert yourself." A constant reminder of her supposed concern. I knew she was just biding her time, waiting for me to slip up, for a chance to reassert her control. But I was ready. I had my mother back, and I wasn't going to let her go. My mother, for her part, was also growing stronger. She would smile at me, a secret conspiratorial smile, and she would simply ignore Sarah's little notes and lists. She was a quiet warrior, fighting her own battle for independence. One afternoon, I got a frantic phone call from Martha, my mother's neighbor. "David, you have to come over. Sarah's here and she's not happy. She's yelling at your mother. I think she knows." My heart leaped into my throat. I dropped everything and drove to the apartment complex, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The drive felt longer than usual, the streets of Evanston blurring into a panicked haze. I pulled into the parking lot and saw Sarah's SUV parked sideways, as if she had just abandoned it in a fit of rage. I ran to the apartment, my mind replaying all the worst-case scenarios. I opened the door, and the sight that greeted me was a scene of domestic chaos. My mother was standing in the middle of the living room, her face pale, her shoulders slumped. Sarah was standing over her, her face a furious mask. "I don't understand, Mom. Why are you doing this? I'm the one who takes care of you. I'm the one who sacrifices everything for you, and you just go behind my back and do this." "I'm not doing anything wrong, Sarah," my mother said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm just spending time with my son." "He's not your son. He's a thief," Sarah screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. "He's trying to steal you away from me." "He's not stealing anything," my mother said, her voice growing stronger. "He's just giving me back my life. You're the one who tried to take it away." Sarah flinched, as if my mother had struck her. For a moment she was speechless. Then she looked at me, a cold fury in her eyes. "You," she spat. "This is all your fault. You did this." I walked into the room, my voice low and steady. "No, Sarah. I didn't do anything. Mom did this. She chose to have a life. She chose to be happy. You can't control her anymore." "I'm not trying to control her. I'm trying to help her," she screamed, her voice now a frantic, desperate plea. "She's not well. She needs me. You don't know what it's like." "The doctor said." "What doctor?" I asked, cutting her off. "What did the doctor say?" "I've been to all of Mom's appointments for the past 2 months. We've talked to her doctor. He said she's perfectly healthy. He said she needs to get out more, that she needs to see her friends and her family." The lie I had just told was a desperate gamble. I hadn't been to any of my mother's appointments, but I knew that Sarah had been using the threat of my mother's supposed illness as a way to control her. I watched her face, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. You're lying." "Am I?" I said, a cold smile on my face. "I'm the one who's been at her door every Saturday. I'm the one who's been taking her to lunch. I'm the one who's been helping her with her errands. You're the one who's been telling her she's sick and that she needs to stay home. Who do you think the doctor would believe?" Sarah's face crumpled. The years of resentment, of feeling like she was the one who was left behind, who had to sacrifice, came to the surface. "I did everything for her. I gave up my life for her, and this is what I get. You just walk in here and you get everything." She looked at my mother, her eyes full of a heartbroken fury. "I'm done. You can have him. You can have your Saturdays. I'm done." She turned and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. My mother stood there, a small, trembling figure. I walked over to her and put my arms around her. She was so small, so fragile. She put her head on my chest and started to sob, the tears a release of weeks of pent-up fear and stress. "I'm so sorry, David," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It's okay, you didn't do anything wrong." She pulled away. Her eyes, though red and swollen, had a new determined glint in them. "I know, but I had to stand up to her. I had to let her go. I can't live like this anymore." The emotional toll of the confrontation was heavy, but in the end, it was a necessary cleansing. Sarah had made her final, dramatic play, and she had lost. Her control was gone. She had chosen to walk away, to sever the ties that had been suffocating our mother. The battle had been won, not by me, but by my mother. She had found her voice, and she had chosen herself. The path forward was still unclear. But for the first time in a long time, the future felt like a hopeful thing, not a suffocating one. The storm had finally broken, and the sky, though a little grey, was beginning to clear. The days and weeks following the final confrontation with Sarah were a strange mixture of relief and unease. The air in my mother's apartment felt lighter, as if a great, suffocating weight had been lifted. The phone calls from Sarah stopped completely. She had made good on her threat. She had walked away, and in her mind she had washed her hands of us. My mother was sad about the loss of her grandchildren, but she also seemed to understand that it was an inevitable consequence of standing up for herself. She was mourning a relationship that had become toxic, a sacrifice she had to make for her own well-being. My mother's social life, which had been slowly choked off by Sarah's demands, came roaring back to life. Her bridge club friends, her book club, her neighbors, they all started coming over, inviting her out and filling her days with companionship and laughter. She was no longer a reclusive figure, a prisoner in her own home. She was Eleanor, the matriarch, the friend, the person she used to be. The transformation was slow but profound. Our Saturdays, however, remained sacred. They were no longer a desperate act of defiance, but a quiet, peaceful ritual. We would talk, we would eat, and sometimes we would just sit in silence, content in each other's presence. I would bring her new books, and she would tell me all about her week. We had a new kind of relationship, one built on trust and a deeper, more profound understanding of each other. She had seen me fight for her, and she had fought for herself. The bond we shared was unbreakable. One Saturday, a few months after the confrontation, I was at my mother's apartment helping her with a new computer she had bought. She had taken a class at the community center and was learning how to email and use social media. It was a new world for her, and she was so excited about it. As I was showing her how to set up an email account, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She looked at me, a flicker of fear in her eyes. I knew what she was thinking. What if it was Sarah trying to come back with a new tactic? I nodded at her, a silent encouragement. She answered the phone, her voice a little shaky at first. "Hello?" She listened for a moment, her eyes wide with surprise. Oh, hello, yes, this is her." She listened for another long moment, her face a mixture of emotions. "Yes, of course, that's a wonderful idea. Thank you. Yes, okay, bye-bye." She hung up the phone, her hand trembling. "Who was that, Mom?" I asked, a knot of anxiety in my stomach. She looked at me, a slow, tentative smile spreading across her face. "That was Sarah's son, my grandson. He's 14 now, a teenager. He called me. He said he wanted to come over and see me. He said he missed me. He asked if he could come over on a Saturday so he could see you too." My heart leaped in my chest. "He did?" "Yes," she said, her voice a little shaky with emotion. "He said he missed our Saturdays. He said he overheard Sarah and I arguing that day, and he's been thinking about it ever since. He said he misses the way things used to be. He told me he and his sister have been talking to each other, and they decided they don't want to choose between their grandmother and their mother. He said they just want to be a family again." The tears that had been threatening to fall finally spilled over. This was the true victory, the one I had been fighting for all along. It wasn't about me winning against Sarah. It was about our family healing. It was about a young boy, a teenager, seeing the truth and having the courage to act on it. It was a testament to the fact that love and connection could not be held hostage. The next Saturday, as I walked into my mother's apartment, I saw him standing there. My nephew, a lanky, gangly teenager, standing in the middle of the living room, a nervous smile on his face. He wasn't the small, boisterous boy I remembered. He was a young man, a boy with a conscience and a heart full of love. He saw me and his face broke into a wide smile. "Uncle David," he said, his voice a little shy. "Hey, it's been a while." "It has, son," I said, walking over and giving him a hug. He was stiff at first, then he relaxed and he hugged me back. The hug was a promise, a silent agreement that the past was in the past, and a new future was about to begin. The road ahead was still unclear. We would have to navigate the complex emotions of our family, the lingering resentment and hurt. but for the first time in a long time, the future felt full of possibility. The storm had passed, and the sun was finally beginning to break through the clouds. The journey of healing was a long one, but we were finally on our way. The return of my nephew, and soon after my niece, to our Saturday rituals was a slow, tentative process. At first they were quiet, a little shy as if they were stepping into a foreign land. They would sit on the sofa, a little out of place, watching my mother and me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. But as the weeks went on, the old comfort began to return. My nephew, a budding tech enthusiast, would talk to me about his favorite video games, and my niece would talk to my mother about her school plays and her friends. The conversations were light, but they were a bridge, a way back to a family that had been fractured for so long. Sarah, true to her word, remained absent. My mother would occasionally get a text from her, a curt, formal message about something mundane, like a doctor's appointment or a bill that needed to be paid. The relationship was now purely transactional. The emotional blackmail had failed, and in her mind, she had lost. She was no longer in control, and she had no interest in being a part of a family where she wasn't the one calling the shots. I tried, on more than one occasion, to reach out to her. I left her a voicemail, a simple, heartfelt message. "Sarah, Mom misses you. We miss you. The kids miss you. We can fix this. Please, just call me." My calls and texts went unanswered. The silence was her final word on the matter, a testament to her inability to let go of her resentment and her need for control. My mother, for her part, was a different woman. She was vibrant, social, and full of life. She had reconnected with her friends, and she was taking a new art class at the community center. She would show me her drawings, simple, beautiful sketches of flowers and landscapes, and her face would be lit up with a newfound joy. She was a testament to the fact that you can, in fact, heal from emotional wounds and reclaim your life. One Saturday, a few months after the kids had started coming over again, my nephew pulled me aside. We were in the kitchen, and he was helping me with the dishes. "Uncle David," he said, his voice low, a little nervous, "I'm sorry. For everything. For what Aunt Sarah did." "You have nothing to be sorry for, son," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good kid. You did the right thing. You chose family." He nodded, a serious look on his face. "I know, it's just... I miss my mom. I love her. I wish she would just be happy for Grandma. And for us." His words hit me hard. He wasn't just a kid who missed his grandmother. He was a boy who was caught in the crossfire of his parents' and his aunt's battle. He was a boy who loved his mother, and he was grieving the loss of her even though she was still alive. It was a painful but a necessary realization. This wasn't just about me and my mother. It was about a family and the choices that had been made. I decided in that moment to make one last attempt. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. I went to Sarah's house, a beautiful, sprawling home in the suburbs that was a testament to her success. I walked up to her front door, and I knocked. I was a man on a mission, a messenger of peace, one last time. She opened the door, her face a mixture of surprise and cold fury. "What do you want, David? I told you I'm done." "I know, Sarah," I said, my voice calm. "And I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell you that your kids are with Mom. They miss you. They love you. They want to be a family again. But they can't do it alone. They need you to be a part of it." She looked at me, her face unreadable. Then she looked past me, to her perfectly manicured lawn, to the quiet suburban street. "I can't," she said, her voice a pained whisper. "I can't go back, not after everything that was said." "You can," I said, my voice firm. "You can come over. You can apologize. You can start over. It's not about winning or losing, Sarah. It's about being a family. It's about your mother. She loves you. She misses you. She's waiting for you to come home." She didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a conflict I knew all too well, a conflict between her pride and her love for her family. I didn't push it. I had said my piece. I turned and walked away. The ball was in her court. The choice was hers. The next Saturday, as my mother and I were eating dinner, the doorbell rang. My mother looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. I walked to the door and I opened it. There she was, Sarah, standing on the porch, a small, tentative smile on her face. Her eyes were red, but there was a flicker of something else in them, something that looked a lot like hope. "Hello, David," she said, her voice a little shaky. Is she home?" "She is," I said, a smile breaking through the tears that were threatening to fall. "She's waiting for you." I stepped aside and let her in. The family was not complete yet. We had a long road of healing ahead of us, of conversations that needed to be had, of wounds that needed to be mended. But for the first time in a long time, the house felt full. The sound of our voices, the smell of my mother's cooking, the comfort of a family that had been broken and was now slowly, but surely, being put back together. The story wasn't over. It was a new beginning. And this time, we would all be in it together.